Hey book friends, welcome back. Today I am going to share with you my 25 bookish facts about yours truly. Hey guys, so like I said in the intro, today I am doing the 25 bookish facts. I think it's a tag, although I haven't really seen people do it as a tag. I just see this 25 bookish facts floating around on the internet here, and I thought that was a great idea and I wanted to do one myself because it looks like a lot of fun. So here are my 25 bookish facts about me and my reading habits and likes and dislikes. So here we go. I learned to read using Dr. Seuss. I had a babysitter who was addicted to Dr. Seuss, so she would bring Dr. Seuss books over and she would teach us how to read using Dr. Seuss. The first book I read by myself was Green Eggs and Ham. I've also really enjoyed Marvin K. Mooney, Will You Please Go Now? And those are some of my favorites. I also enjoyed All the Places You Will Go before it was a big grad gift fad. My favorite childhood books were the Ramona series by Beverly Cleary and the Great Illustrated Classics for Children collection. My most read book is Heidi. I've read this I don't know how many times. This was the first chapter book I read when I was in middle school, and it is one of my all-time favorite stories. The best time for me to read is right before bed and sometimes into the night because I have a problem with putting a book down if it's really good. So I like to read at night before I go to bed to either wind down and relax, or just because that's when I have the time to read, is at night. It was during high school that I learned how to use the Dewey Decimal System. My grade 12 class decided to pull a prank for the grade 12 prank, and they removed all of the books from the library and put it in the teacher's lounge. This was seen as more so vandalism, and our librarian was extremely hurt by this. So after the boys who did it bought her flowers and sincerely apologized for their prank, the entire grade 12 class had to reorganize the library during class time. So my friends and I spent a good quality time learning the Dewey Decimal System and putting the library back to sorts. When I was in Bible college, every student had to have a student work or a student job to kind of keep the cost low for those who wanted to attend college at my Bible school. And my favorite student work was being a librarian assistant. I got to cover books, check out books, and read the shelves, make sure the books were all still in order. I also got to close the library and give students dirty looks as they come running in at the last minute to hand in their papers, because we would hand our papers in the library. I had a lot of fun, and it was kind of nice to have that taste of what being a librarian was like. I absolutely love reading on rainy days, and I haven't met a book addict who would say otherwise. It's nice to stay inside, listen to the rain, it's relaxing, it's beautiful, and just pick up a book and read, and it's just my favorite way to spend a day. I hardly ever cry in books. I now tear up when I read the I Volunteer section in The Hunger Games, just because I find it really impactful and her love for her sister. So I tear up, somewhat cry at the I Volunteer. I did cry in Codename Verity because it was super sad, but again, it wasn't really a full-on cry, it was kind of tear up. For me, it's really where I'm at that stage in life. If something has touched me that has happened in my life, or something I relate to, or something that is just overly powerful. But I haven't had books I'm so invested in that I've actually openly cried while reading a book. I have a very low tolerance for anything creepy. I do not read creepy books. I do not read horror stories. I don't read slashers. I don't read serial killers. I don't read anything that is too super creepy on the paranormal aspect of things, although I don't mind magic, paranormal, and that sort of thing, but I don't like it super creepy, or else I won't be able to sleep at night. I just, no creepy. If it's as creepy as, say, the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who, I can't do it. Even that is borderline too creepy for me, if you know what I'm talking about. Audiobooks are absolutely the best way to go for road trips. I have done road trips with my sister and my best friend, and we listened to the entire Focus on the Family radio dramas of the Chronicles of Narnia, and it was the way to go. We also attempted the Screwtape Letters, also done by Focus on the Family radio drama, which featured Andy Serkis, and it was a really well done drama. I haven't finished it yet though, but I actually prefer audiobooks and radio dramas of books to music when I'm on a road trip. If I am listening to an audiobook at home or trying to get through a series and I just need to listen to it instead of read it, like the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis, which I'm still working on, I like to color while I'm listening. It helps me focus. Or I crochet while I'm listening to audiobooks, because that is also something I can do and focus while I'm doing that. And it's fun. I love it. I read a lot of young adult books, and I actually prefer YA to adult books. I just like them a lot better. They seem to have a lot more storyline to it, a lot more action and fun and stuff. Even though a lot more adult books have more depth, I just find where I'm at in my life, I prefer young adult to adult books. I am extremely picky about the content of my books, especially for sexual content. I am not a fan of reading that as an entertainment aspect, and those are my own personal beliefs and convictions and preferences. I just don't like a lot of sexual content. I don't mind kissing and romance. I just, once we get a little bit more described, I'm not a fan. I don't need to read about all of that. So just not a fan, so I'm extremely picky about the content of my books that I read. When I am in a reading slump, historical fiction is the way to go to get me out of a reading slump. I love the Regency time period, like a Jane Austen. I love medieval romance, and medieval time period is probably my favorite historical time period to read and to get out of a reading slump. I also really like World War II setting historical fiction as well, and that's also another historical fiction time setting that I like to read to get out of a reading slump. So these are my go-tos for getting myself out of a reading slump. When I was finished at Bible college, I used to be a huge reader in middle grade, kind of early high school, but then once I got to later high school and then later after high school and then into Bible school, I kind of stopped reading for fun and kind of lost touch with the books that were being released at the time. So when I had just graduated Bible college, The Hunger Games was a huge thing and had just started production for the movies. So The Hunger Games would have been my first step into the YA genre, as well as back into reading. I kind of tapered off again after reading The Hunger Games and transitioning from moving between provinces and kind of deciding what to actually do with my life. And the books that got me back into reading yet again and even introduced me into Booktube and my newfound love for reading was The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak and The Hagenheim Fairy Tale Retellings by Melanie Dickerson. I read the first 5 books of this within a couple of days or a week or so. They were just so good and so addicting, and The Book Thief kind of reignited my love for books and reading in general. And why I am on Booktube today is all thanks to reading and finding this beautiful book. I did watch the movie before I read the book, and then when I found it was the book, I loved the book so much more than the movie, but I still really enjoyed the movie. But this is the reason that I am a book addict and on Booktube now. I need to have a series match, either all in hardback or all in paperback. So if they change the covers of a book series mid-book series and some are available in hardback and some are available in paperback, I'll either need to get them all in paperback or all in hardback to match the series. So I need to have a series match. I have made one exception for this, and that is my Hagenheim Fairy Tale Retellings. The first books were produced by Zondervan. The second publisher was Thomas Nelson for the last 2 books, and these are the only ones that came out in hardback, and the rest are only in paperback. So this is the only exception I made because the hardback was super pretty. When I am book shopping, I tend to stick to discount bookstores like Book Outlet and secondhand bookstores and books where you can take old books that you don't want anymore and get credit towards new books or secondhand books. I like to shop there. That way I'm keeping this hobby a little bit more cost conscious and keeping an eye on how I am spending my money and investing in these books. Along with that, I like to try before I buy with the library, so if I'm not 100% sure I am going to like this book, I will take it out from the library first. If I like the first 2 books of a series, I will then invest in the rest of the series. If I really like the book and I know that I'm going to reread it, then I will purchase and invest in the book. I have a very strong rule that I can only have 1 edition of a book. I will not go out and buy multiple editions of a book just because they've released prettier editions of a book. I find it's not something that I want to invest my money in that way. There have been a few exceptions that I have made. For example, I have 2 editions of Heidi. I have my children's classic illustrated that I grew up with, and then I have this beautiful vintage edition that I bought off Etsy because it had an illustrator I really, really liked. But this is the only exception I've made. I'm also planning on buying another edition of Heidi that I can kind of have for a reading edition, because this one is extremely old and it's kind of an antique, so I'd like to not read this on a regular basis. And I'm a little too grown up for my great illustrated classic for children, so I'm going to probably buy myself a readable copy of Heidi. Another exception to that rule is if I am replacing mass market paperbacks. I had mass market paperbacks of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I replaced those with these beautiful editions. Which kind of brings me into my next fact. I cannot stand reading mass markets, especially if they're a huge chunky story like the Lord of the Rings. I was given a set of the Lord of the Rings trilogy in mass market. I attempted to start reading it and I just couldn't. The only book I've read in mass market form was Northanger Abbey. And when I tried to start Pride and Prejudice, I was like, no, I need a different edition if I'm going to read these. So I cannot stand reading mass market paperbacks. I am never happy with my shelf organization. I am constantly reorganizing my shelves, especially if I buy and add new books. I don't even know how I organize my books. I kind of keep World War II fiction, dystopians. I have a C.S. Lewis and a Tolkien shelf, but other than that, I'm constantly moving around my shelves because I have no rhyme or reason to their organization, just as I like it aesthetically and how organization kind of works in my brain, but I never seem to be 100% satisfied on how my shelves look. Because I do a lot of try before I buy with my library, I put a lot of books on hold in my library, which means now my library actually calls me more than anybody else. I have my library as a contact in my phone, so I see when they call me, and they have called me I think 3 or 4 times this week just to let me know that I have books on hold. So my library calls me even more than my doctor does, and just more than any of my family calls me. So I get a lot of phone calls from my library. I'm a Goodreads addict. Goodreads is always open when I'm reading. I'm always updating my status. I love seeing progress bars and page numbers and knowing what exact percentage I am throughout a book. It's just something I really like seeing. I love looking at the progress bar of my Goodreads reading challenge and seeing all the books I read in a year. I just love seeing that. It's very strange, but I love it, and I always have Goodreads open on my computer, and I always update. Even if I read like a chapter and then I decide to read the next chapter, I'll update the first chapter, and if I keep reading, I'll update the next chapter even if it was like 10 minutes later. I'm always updating my Goodreads reading. I have really started to like filming reviews. I had some really great feedback on my first couple reviews. I really enjoyed just being able to gush and talk about the books that I loved. Sadly, this has been stated several times now, but sadly, book reviews do not get a lot of views on Booktube, which makes no sense to me. We should be on here looking for great books. I love finding reviews of books to kind of give me an idea if I will like this book or not. I also really like it when people give book reviews that have content, not necessarily warnings or trigger warnings for content, but just kind of let you know what the content is like in a book, which is why I like doing that. And I just generally like hearing what people thought about a book. Even if it was a book I hated or a book I loved and they didn't like, I love book reviews. Book reviews are where it's at. We need to give them more views. And with book reviews, I finally have a community of people that I can gush about my love of reading, about my book addict. I can post pictures of beautiful books and just appreciate having a community now where we can gush and appreciate the written word together. So I really like having a Booktube community. So it's been really fun to get to know several of you here on Booktube. And my last fact about me is sometimes when I'm in my office, library area, I just sit back and stare at my bookshelf and just appreciate matching complete trilogies and just my beautiful books. I'll just sit there and stare at my bookshelf. It's weird, but I like it. And when I buy new books, I like to put them on my bookshelf first and just kind of place them where I want them and appreciate them from sitting at my desk. And yes, I stare at my bookshelves for a good solid 10-15 minutes, but I appreciate it and I love it. So you can't tell me you don't appreciate a pretty bookshelf or even just looking at your own beautiful books. So those are my 25 bookish facts about me, a little bit of my bookish history, my bookish quirks, and what I do when I read. I would love to see if any of you guys have done this video, so please post some links in the comments below. I'll love to come and check out what makes you you and why you love books. As always guys, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!